friends, this lecture on freedom of trade, commerce and intercourse under the Indian Constitution is essentially meant for law students and those who are appearing for competitive examinations. Freedom of trade means free movement and exchange of goods. It connotes that there shall be no prior restraint on trade and commerce in a federal state. A federal state confronts a unique problem which cannot arise in a unitary state. In every federal country, disparity in the economic position of different states is a normal feature. States may erect trade barriers at the border, and the creation of such regional trade barriers may hurt the national interest. The constitution makers in India realize that economic unity and integration of the country is necessary for the progress and stability of the country. Hence, they desire to promote free flow of trade and commerce by making the whole country as one common market. With a view to achieve the above objective, several specific provisions like Articles 301 to Article 307 are provided in Article Part 13 of the Constitution. In framing these provisions, the framers were influenced by similar provisions which exist in the Australian Constitution. Article 301 provides that the trade, commerce and intercourse throughout the country shall be free. This provision imposes a general limitation on the exercise of legislative powers of centre and states to secure unhampered free flow of trade and commerce in the country. In a state of Madras versus Nataraj Mudaliar in 1969, the Supreme Court held that all restrictions which directly and immediately affect the movement of trade are declared by Article 301 to be ineffective. However, certain activities like gambling, sale of lotteries, intoxicating liquors may not be regarded as a trade and commerce under Article 301 and cannot seek any protection. Article 301 includes freedom from tax laws. The power to levy tax must inevitably be controlled by constitutional limitations. A tax which directly and immediately restricts trade falls within the purview of Article 301. A restriction which is indirect or inconsequential impediment on trade, commerce is not hit by Article 301. Thus, imposition of sales tax of goods sold is held to be indirect. In Andhra Sugars versus State of Andhra Pradesh, decided in 1968, the Supreme Court held that the central sales tax should not be found to interfere with the freedom of trade or commerce, hence it was valid. Further, it was held that the taxing provision was a valid restriction imposed in a public interest under Article 302. To reconcile the freedom of trade and commerce and power of taxation, the Supreme Court has evolved the concept of regulatory and compensatory tax. Taxes to make payment for facilities provided, measures which impose compensatory taxes or which are purely regulatory do not come under the purview of Article 301. In Athiabari Tea Company versus State of Assam, decided in 1961 by the Supreme Court, a tax levied by Assam on the carriage of tea by road or inland waterways was held bad for the transport or movement of goods was taxed solely on the basis of transport of goods and it directly affects the freedom of trade. It was held that whatever else Article 301 may include or may not include, it certainly includes movement of goods, which is of the very essence of all trade and is of its integral part. The court did not take the quantum of tax into account in this case, which was not that excessive. However, this view was criticized as having great adverse effect upon financial autonomy of the state. The matter was reconsidered in 1962 by the Supreme Court in another case, that is automobile transport versus the state of Rajasthan. Rajasthan state levied a tax on motor vehicles used within the state in any public place or kept for use in the state. The validity of the tax was challenged on the ground that it constituted a direct and immediate restriction on the movement of trade and commerce. The Supreme Court held that it was a compensatory tax having been levied for use of the roads maintained by the state, and it was not invalid under Article 301 as it did not hamper but facilitated the trade. Regulatory measures like traffic rules, filing of returns, making of declarations, regulation of hours of work, equipment weight, size of load, traffic laws are not hit by Article 301. Let us now consider exceptions to freedom of trade and commerce guaranteed by Article 301. As we all know, no freedom can be absolute. Thus, the Constitution has provided for the curtailment of freedom of trade by Articles 302 to 305. Under Article 302, the Parliament has the power to regulate trade and commerce in public interest, notwithstanding the protection conferred by Article 301. The restriction on freedom under Article 302 covers both intrastate, that is within state, and interstate. Restrictions under Essential Commodities Act, payment of statutory bonus under the Payment Bonus Act, banning of leases for quarrying in favor of private persons are some of the instances. Now, under Article 303, Clause 1, the Parliament shall not pass any law giving any preference to any one state over another state or discriminate between states. This provision is in terms an exception to Article 302. However, Clause 2 relaxes the severity of the limitation imposed on Parliament by Clause 1. Under Clause 2, the Parliament may prefer one state over another or discriminate between states if it is declared by law made by Parliament that it is necessary to deal with scarcity of goods in any part of India. Now, let us deal with the state's power to regulate trade and commerce under Article 304. This Article 304 consists of two clauses which operate as a proviso or exception to Articles 301 and 303. Article 304 Clause A imposes no ban but lifts the ban imposed by Article 301 and 303. Thus, a state legislature may by law impose on goods imported from other states any tax to which similar goods produced within that state are subject. But the state shall not discriminate between goods so imported from other states and similar goods produced within the state. Next, the Article 304 Clause B authorizes a state legislature to impose by law such reasonable restrictions on freedom of trade and commerce with or within that state as may be required in public interest. However, no bill for this purpose shall be introduced in the state legislature without the previous sanction of the President. So, to justify restriction by states on freedom of trade and commerce, three conditions are to be fulfilled. They are: 1. Prior sanction of the President for the law should have been obtained. Then, tax in question must constitute a reasonable restriction. Then, lastly, the tax has been levied actually in public interest. This provision actually secures a balance between national and regional economic interest. Next article, that is Article 305, saves laws enacted before the commencement of the Constitution from the operation of Articles 301 and 303, except insofar as the President may by order otherwise direct. Article 307 provides for the appointment of an independent authority for carrying out the purposes of Articles 301 to 304 and to confer on the authority such powers and duties as it thinks necessary. It appears that the Constitution makers took the idea from the working of the Commerce Clause of US and provisions of Australian Constitution. In 1877, an interstate commerce commission was established in the United States. In India, there is so much uneven growth between different states, leading to conflicts between those states regarding economic issues, and there is a need for a similar institution like Interstate Commerce Commission of US to resolve them judiciously and equitably. It can be given both adjudicative and consultative functions. Thus, the above provisions of the Indian Constitution are envisaged to make the whole country one common market by removing regional disparities in the interstate trade and commerce. With this, I conclude this lecture on the freedom of trade, commerce, and intercourse as provided in the Indian Constitution. Thank you.